My name is Claire Donnelly. I'm 33 years old. I work as a dental hygienist 4 days a week, and until last spring, I believed I had become very good at surviving chaos quietly, not fixing it, not defeating it, just arranging my life around it so it caused the least damage possible. That is a skill you learn when you co parent with a man like my ex husband. Ethan was never the kind of man who smashed plates or screamed in parking lots. If he had been, leaving him would have been easier to explain to other people and maybe even to myself. Ethan did something more exhausting. He rewrote reality in real time. If he missed school pickup, it was because I never confirmed the time. If he forgot our son's inhaler, it was because I usually handled that. If he said something cruel, he'd smile afterward and tell me I was too sensitive, then tell everyone else I was stressed. Living with him felt like standing on a floor that kept shifting 1 inch at a time until one day you looked down and realized you no longer knew where level was. We were divorced for almost 2 years when the school called. Our son, Mason, was 8. Smart, funny, big brown eyes, the kind of kid who would stop mid-sentence to rescue a beetle off the sidewalk and then ask if beetles got lonely. He had asthma, mild, but unpredictable, and every school year, I filled out the same paperwork with the same care. Emergency contacts, medications, pickup permissions, allergy notes, pediatrician number, the whole stack. I always listed myself first, my sister Ava second, and Ethan third. Not because I wanted to punish him, because he missed calls, ignored forms, and once let Mason sit in the nurse's office for 40 minutes because he didn't hear his phone. My sister Ava lived 15 minutes away, answered on the first ring, and understood the difference between probably fine and bring the inhaler now. Ethan hated that I listed Ava before him. He called it disrespectful. I called it practical. His new wife, Kendra, called it alienating. Kendra came along about 6 months after the divorce was final, all smooth hair, polished nails, and a voice so sweet it made your teeth ache. She was one of those women who managed to sound deeply concerned while saying the meanest thing in the room. The first time I met her, she smiled at me over Mason's soccer snacks and said, "I've just heard so much about how overwhelmed you get. I really hope we can make things easier for everyone." I remember staring at her and thinking, he's already started. Over time, I learned Kendra's favorite role was reasonable witness. She didn't openly attack. She observed. She phrased things as concern. Mason looked tired at drop-off. Claire seemed emotional at pickup. I'm only mentioning this because we all care about stability. She worked in HR, which made sense. She sounded like a termination email with lip gloss. Still, I kept my distance. Ethan had remarried. Fine. Kendra wanted to play perfect stepmom every other weekend and post matching baking photos with captions about bonus love. Also fine. Mason liked her well enough. That mattered more than whether I trusted her. And I did what divorced mothers everywhere do. Smiled tightly, documented everything, and saved the real thoughts for the shower. The call came on a Wednesday at 1:17 p.m. I was polishing a patient's lower molars while she told me about her daughter's bridal shower, and my smartwatch buzzed twice in a row. I ignored it at first because I was gloved and leaned over someone's open mouth. But then the front desk assistant tapped my shoulder and whispered, "Claire, it's Mason's school. They say it's urgent." There are words that don't need volume to make your body panic. Urgent is one of them. I stepped out into the hallway, peeled off my gloves, and called the number back immediately. The school secretary, Mrs. Hanley, answered on the second ring, and I knew from her voice before she even said my name that something was wrong. "Ms. Donnelly, thank you for calling back." "What happened?" I asked. "Is Mason okay?" There was a pause, not because she wanted to scare me, but because school staff are trained to speak carefully, and sometimes careful sounds worse. "He's okay," she said. "He had some breathing difficulty after recess. The nurse has him now. He's stable, but we needed to confirm pickup and emergency contact details." My whole body loosened and tightened at the same time. "Okay," I said, moving toward the break room because my knees had gone weird. "I can be there in 20 minutes. Did he use his inhaler?" "Yes," she said. "The nurse administered it. He responded well. But Ms. Donnelly—" She stopped. I hate when professionals stop before the real sentence. "What?" I asked. Another pause. Papers rustled on her end. "We tried his emergency contacts," she said carefully, "and there seems to be a discrepancy in his file." My hand tightened around the phone. What discrepancy? She exhaled once, and then said the sentence exactly as I still hear it in my head. "When we called the first alternate emergency contact, the name listed was Kendra Donnelly." I stared at the break room vending machine like it had personally betrayed me. "What?" she continued in that apologetic office voice people use when they know they're about to ruin your afternoon. "The file lists Ethan Donnelly as primary father contact, and the first alternate under the parent section is Kendra Donnelly, relationship marked stepmother/authorized guardian." I felt cold all over. "No," I said. "No, that is not correct. My sister Ava Donnelly is the alternate. Kendra is not authorized to make medical decisions." Mrs. Hanley hesitated. "We also have a note attached from last month stating, 'Please direct urgent matters to father's household first due to mother's inconsistent availability.'" For one full second, I couldn't speak. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then I said very quietly, "Read that note again." She did, word for word. Father's household first. Mother's inconsistent availability. I leaned one hand on the break room table because otherwise I might have slid to the floor. "I did not write that," I said. Mrs. Hanley's voice softened immediately. "I didn't think you did." That mattered more than she probably realized, because there is a specific horror in hearing someone recite a lie about you from an official file. It makes you feel erased in a bureaucratic font. "I'm coming right now," I said. "Do not release my son to anyone until I get there." "Of course," she said quickly. "He's with the nurse. He's safe." Safe. I hung up, walked straight to the office manager, and said, "I need to leave. School emergency." I don't remember putting on my coat. I don't remember grabbing my bag. I only remember driving too carefully because panic and traffic lights don't mix, and rehearsing the same facts in my head so I wouldn't sound emotional when I got there. I am Mason's mother. I did not authorize a change. Kendra is not his guardian. My sister Ava is the alternate. "Show me the paperwork." At the school, the receptionist buzzed me in without making me sign the usual late visitor sheet. That was my first clue. The office already knew this was more than a routine pickup. Mrs. Hanley met me at the counter with a face full of professional sympathy. "He's with Nurse Patel," she said. "He's okay." "Show me the file," I said. She hesitated only long enough to be polite. "The principal would like to speak with you too." "Fine," I said, "but I want to see whatever was submitted." Principal Mercer was a broad-shouldered woman in her 50s with short silver hair and the calm posture of someone who had broken up playground fights for 20 years without spilling her coffee. She led me into her office, closed the door, and slid a folder across the desk. "Before we begin," she said, "your son is stable and resting. This is not about his medical status anymore. This is about the contact changes." I opened the folder. There it was. A typed school contact update form dated 3 weeks earlier. Mother's name, Claire Donnelly. Father's name, Ethan Donnelly. Updated emergency contact hierarchy due to maternal scheduling instability. Authorized pickup and emergency release, Ethan Donnelly, Kendra Donnelly. Secondary alternate removed at family request. My stomach twisted. At the bottom was an electronic signature, mine. Or rather, something trying very hard to be mine. Principal Mercer watched my face, not the paper. "You didn't sign this. It wasn't a question." "No," I said. "Absolutely not." She nodded once, like she'd expected that answer. Then Mrs. Hanley, still standing near the door, said the thing that made it all click into an uglier shape. "The email attached to the submission came from your husband's household account." I looked up sharply. "What account?" She checked a printout. "An address with both names in it. Ethan and Kendra family account." Not mine. Not even pretending to be mine. They hadn't impersonated me directly. They'd submitted it as though it came from the shared parental household and hoped the office would process it because the language sounded official enough. And they almost got away with it. Almost. Principal Mercer folded her hands. "We did process it," she said, frankly. "That was our error. The note should have triggered direct confirmation with both parents. It didn't. We're correcting that now." I wanted to be furious at the school. Part of me was. But another part, the exhausted, systems-aware part, recognized the pattern. Forms come in, staff are overworked. A father and stepmother use the right tone. The mother gets quietly repositioned in the file as less stable. And unless someone stops to ask a second question, it all becomes administrative truth. That is how women get moved out of their own children's paperwork. Not with drama, with signatures and concern. I asked to see Mason first because suddenly I needed the sight of him more than I needed answers. He was in the nurse's office on a vinyl cot with a dinosaur blanket over his legs, cheeks a little flushed, but breathing normally. The second he saw me, his whole face changed. Mom. I sat beside him and smoothed his hair back. "Hey, buddy." He looked smaller when he'd been scared. Younger. I hated that. "Mrs. Hanley called Kendra," he said quietly, like he was confessing something bad. I looked at him. "Did she?" He nodded. "And then Nurse Patel said she had to call you too, because something felt weird." I turned and looked through the office window toward the nurse's station where Patel was typing notes. Something felt weird. Bless that woman forever. I bent and kissed Mason's forehead. "You did nothing wrong." He fiddled with the edge of the blanket. "Kendra said she'd be my emergency mom now because it was easier." The room tilted. "What?" He shrugged with one shoulder, trying to act like it didn't matter, because kids can smell when a sentence is explosive, and sometimes they throw it down casually, just to survive their own confusion. "At Dad's house. She said if you were busy all the time, then they'd just put her down at school so no one got mixed up." I forced my face not to change. "When did she say that?" "Like, a while ago?" He looked at me quickly. "I told her you're my real emergency person." She laughed. I smiled at him somehow. A thin, controlled thing. Okay. Inside, something sharp and old and furious had started waking up. I stayed with Mason while the nurse finished her observation window. Then I signed him out personally, with the file now flagged in red. Principal Mercer apologized again, more formally this time, and told me the district office would be notified of the unauthorized alteration. I thanked her because I was raised polite even when I'm furious. Then I walked out with my son, got him buckled into the back seat, and sat in my car gripping the wheel until my breathing slowed enough to drive. Mason was quiet for about 2 blocks. Then he asked, "Are you mad at Dad?" I swallowed. "I'm upset at some adult choices." "That means yes," he said. I almost laughed. "Yeah," I said. "That means yes." At home, I made him toast and apples because post-asthma stress always killed his appetite. Then I called my sister, Ava. She answered on the first ring with, "What happened?" By the time I finished the story, she was already halfway to my place. Ava is 2 years younger than me, and none of the family's manipulation ever stuck to her the same way it stuck to me. Maybe because she moved out faster. Maybe because she never confused peacekeeping with virtue. Ava is the kind of woman who hears someone altered your child's school records and says immediately, "I'm bringing my laptop and a printer." She arrived in 11 minutes. We sat at my kitchen table while Mason watched cartoons in the living room with his inhaler beside him and went through everything: screenshots of the current online portal, old enrollment copies from last fall, pediatric records listing me and Ava, email histories, the divorce decree, pickup schedule, all of it. Then I called Ethan. I knew if I waited, he would call me first with the script already polished. He answered on the fourth ring, sounding out of breath, like he had either jogged to the phone or was practicing sounding surprised. "Claire? You changed Mason's emergency contact at school?" A tiny pause, barely there, but there. Then, "What?" "You heard me." His voice dropped into that calm, weary register he used when trying to suggest I was being unreasonable before I'd finished the accusation. If this is about today, Kendra was only trying to help. The school needed someone consistent. I nearly laughed from the audacity. "Consistent?" I repeated. "You listed my son's stepmother as authorized guardian and added a note saying I'm inconsistently available." Another pause. Then he said, "Well, lately, you have been hard to reach." Ava, sitting across from me, mouthed "wow" and wrote something on a legal pad so hard I thought the pen would snap. "Hard to reach," I said. I picked up the school's call immediately. "That's not the point," he said. "The point is logistics. Kendra handles more of the day-to-day on our custody days, and the school was getting confused. The school was not confused until you made a fraudulent change." "Fraudulent is dramatic," he said. And there it was, the old word weapon. "You always escalate." My fingers went numb. He kept going, now with more confidence, because he thought he was gaining ground. "Look, Claire, this is exactly why Kendra was worried. You react emotionally instead of practically. She was trying to create stability for Mason." Stability. I looked at the printed school form in front of me with my fake signature at the bottom and felt a kind of stillness come over me that I've only ever felt once before. During labor, right before transition, when your body understands pain is no longer avoidable and chooses focus instead. "Put Kendra on," I said. He hesitated. "She's busy." "Put her on." More silence. Then muffled voices. Then Kendra. "Claire," she said, soft as cream. "I am so glad Mason is okay. We were both terribly worried. You have to understand, women like Kendra don't shout. They colonize." "Kendra," I said, "did you tell my son you were his emergency mom now?" She exhaled gently, performing sadness. "Oh dear. Is that how he repeated it?" I said I'd be an emergency contact when needed. Sometimes children misunderstand. Ava whispered, "I hate her," into her coffee mug. I ignored that and kept my voice even. Did you submit the school change? I helped Ethan with the paperwork, she said. He has equal parental rights, Claire. We thought you'd appreciate one less thing to manage. I actually closed my eyes because that sentence was so perfectly engineered to make me sound controlling if I objected. One less thing to manage was my legal authority over medical emergencies involving my child. You forged my signature? I said. No, she said smoothly. The form was signed digitally through the family portal. There is no family portal under your name. Another tiny pause. Then, this is getting unnecessarily hostile. I opened my eyes and stared at the wall above the sink. No, I said. What's getting hostile is you inserting yourself into school medical authority and telling my son I'm not his primary parent in a crisis. She gave a little wounded laugh. No one said you weren't primary. You moved my sister off the file. We updated it to reflect the current household reality. That was the sentence. That one. Not an accident. Not confusion. Not just trying to help. A deliberate attempt to replace the person who protected my son with a person who wanted access. I ended the call without another word. Ava looked at me for a long second and said, "Okay, so we're not doing normal co-parenting anymore." "No," I said. "We're doing documentation." That night, I emailed the school principal, the district administrator, Mason's teacher, the nurse, and copied myself and Ava. Clear language, attached records, timeline, statement that no one other than me, Ava, and Ethan were authorized contacts pending written confirmation from me. Request for full audit of account changes, submission IP, and communication logs. Request for written acknowledgement that Kendra had no independent medical or pickup authority, absent express written consent from both legal parents or court order. I also emailed my lawyer. Then I printed everything because paper feels harder to gaslight. The next morning, Ethan sent a long text about how disappointed he was that I was turning an honest attempt to help into legal drama. Kendra followed with an email titled, "For the Sake of Mason," in which she claimed my resentment toward her was interfering with co-parenting and that she had stepped in where there was a vacuum. A vacuum. I read that line 3 times. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer, too. 2 days later, the district responded, quietly but decisively. The school had traced the unauthorized change to a parent portal login linked to Ethan's credentials. The note about my inconsistent availability had been manually entered from the same session. My signature was not verified. The platform only recorded typed acknowledgement, which meant no, they hadn't exactly forged my signature in the old-fashioned pen and ink sense. They had done something almost more infuriating. Used a sloppy digital system and sexist assumptions to slide me sideways out of my son's file. The district apologized. The principal apologized again. The nurse called me personally to say, "I'm glad we trusted our gut on that note." I thanked her twice. Then my lawyer called. Her name was Marissa Sloan, and she had the soothing voice of someone who enjoys strategy more than volume. After reading the emails and school logs, she said, "This is not just overstepping. This is attempted interference." With what? I asked, though I knew. Decision-making authority, parent-child relationship, and medical access. He is creating a paper trail to position you as unstable or unavailable. I sat down so fast the chair screeched, because once she said it plainly, I could see the whole structure, not just the school form. Kendra volunteering for every field trip Ethan's weekend touched. Kendra emailing the teacher from her personal account to ask for behavioral updates. Ethan suddenly insisting that Mason keep duplicate medication supplies at his house, but never refilling them. The little remarks to mutual friends. Claire gets overwhelmed. Claire's very emotional. Claire needs support. They weren't just playing house, they were building a record. And if today had gone differently, if the nurse had simply released Mason to Kendra during a breathing episode, if the school had normalized her in the file, if enough little notes piled up over time, it could become something uglier later. Can they do that? I asked quietly. Marissa didn't soften it. People try. That afternoon, I picked Mason up from school myself. He looked better physically, but his face tightened the second he saw me. What? I asked, kneeling to his level. He looked over his shoulder toward the office, then back at me. Kendra came. My entire body went hot. When? After lunch, she was talking to Principal Mercer. Then she saw me and smiled weird. Smiled weird. The vocabulary of children is often more accurate than adults. Did she speak to you? He nodded. She said, "Don't worry, honey. Grown-ups get confused sometimes, but I'm still here if your mom has one of her episodes." I think something inside me actually rang. What episodes? He shrugged, but his face had gone red. I don't know. I told her to stop saying weird stuff. I stood up so slowly, it felt like my bones had become glass. Kendra had come to the school after being told she had no authority and spoken to my child about my supposed episodes. That wasn't concern. That was grooming the narrative directly into him. I marched back into the office with Mason beside me and asked Principal Mercer very calmly whether she had allowed a non-authorized adult to speak privately to my child after a formal complaint had already been filed. To her credit, Principal Mercer looked horrified. She was not authorized to remove him, she said quickly. That's not what I asked. Silence. Then, no. She should not have spoken to him alone. I held Mason's hand tighter. I was done being understanding. By that evening, Marissa had filed an emergency motion clarifying contact authority and requesting court review of repeated interference by the father's spouse. Strong language, not emotional language, just specific, merciless language. Unauthorized alteration of school emergency records, false characterization of mother's availability, inappropriate direct communication to minor suggesting mother's instability, attempt to elevate step-parent into decision-making role without court authorization. When Ethan got served, he called 17 times in an hour. I did not answer a single one. His voicemails evolved in stages. First, offended. This is insane. Then, paternal. You're making a mistake. Then, angry. You want to turn this into war? Then, finally, scared. Claire, call me before this gets out of hand. Too late. At the hearing, Ethan wore his gray suit and concern face. Kendra wasn't allowed at counsel table, but she sat behind him in a cream blouse, holding herself like a woman sure the room would find her reasonable once she was allowed to explain. They always count on explanation. Marissa did not. She used timelines, school logs, screenshots, and district acknowledgement. She introduced Kendra's vacuum email. She introduced Ethan's text about my being hard to reach. She introduced Nurse Patel's statement that the school felt the note about my inconsistent availability was off because I had consistently answered past medical calls and provided updated emergency instructions. Then she did the thing that made the room finally stop seeing this as petty co-parenting friction. She introduced the school counselor's note from a same-week check-in with Mason. He had said, in his own 8-year-old handwriting on a feelings worksheet, "I don't want my stepmom to tell people my mom's brain is bad." The courtroom went quiet in a way that made my skin prickle. Ethan's lawyer tried to recover it as misunderstanding, blended family adjustment, overzealous but well intentioned involvement. The judge, a woman in her 60s with half moon glasses and zero visible patience for nonsense, looked over the file and said, "Well intentioned adults do not alter emergency medical authority by stealth." Then she looked directly at Ethan and asked, "Did you authorize the school change?" He actually tried to say, "I may have misunderstood the form." The judge's expression did not move. "Did you authorize it?" "Yes," he said. "And did you instruct your wife to communicate with the child about the mother's mental state?" "No," he said quickly. Kendra, behind him, moved like she wanted to say something and couldn't. Then Marissa, in the calmest tone imaginable, said, "Your Honor, we have one more exhibit." It was a text thread between Ethan and Kendra recovered from a shared parenting app export. Not because they were stupid enough to use the app directly for the plan, but because Kendra had texted him after the fact, and Ethan, in one of his many efforts to sound strategic, had replied in the wrong place. Kendra, "If the school starts calling me first, the rest will follow." Ethan, "Good. Claire only keeps control because everyone defaults to her." Kendra, "Then we stop defaulting." I watched Ethan's face while the judge read it. That was the moment he knew this wasn't a misunderstanding hearing anymore. It was an exposure. The judge modified the school communication order immediately. She reaffirmed me as primary medical decision maker, absent emergency impossibility, restored Ava as alternate, barred Kendra from independent school or medical contact without my written consent or court authorization, and issued a warning on record that any further attempt to undermine parental authority through third-party interference would be considered a serious custody issue. Kendra cried after that, not dramatically, just small, wounded tears, as if she were the one being pushed out of a place she had lovingly built. I looked at her and felt nothing. That surprised me. I thought I'd feel triumph, vindication, rage. Instead, I felt tired and very clear, because the truth was never that she loved Mason too much. The truth was that she wanted power wrapped in the language of care. She wanted to become official by accumulation, forms, smiles, concern, soft suggestions, a note here, a pickup there. Until one day, the file reflected her more than me. That is how some people steal. Not loudly, incrementally. After court, Ethan caught up to me in the hallway while Marissa spoke to the clerk. His face was tight, voice low. "You embarrassed us." I almost smiled. "No," I said. "You did paperwork." He stared at me, maybe expecting a larger speech. There wasn't one. I walked away. Things changed after that, but not all at once and not cleanly. Ethan became more careful. Kendra stopped emailing the school. They both started communicating through the parenting app in a tone so sterile it sounded machine-generated. Mason still went there on custody days because real life doesn't resolve like a revenge fantasy, and the court wasn't severing his father over one hearing. But the ground shifted. Teachers copied me first. The nurse called me first. The file was corrected. And most importantly, Mason watched adults tell the truth out loud in a room where lies had signatures and still lost. A few weeks after the hearing, he asked me in the car, "Can someone just become your mom if they write it on a paper?" I had to pull over before I answered because the question hit somewhere deeper than anger. "No," I said finally. "Paper matters, but truth matters more. And if someone lies on paper, we fix it." He nodded like he was filing that away for later. Then he asked, "Was Kendra trying to steal you?" I knew what he meant, even if the words were sideways. "No," I said. "She was trying to move me." He thought about that, Then he looked out the window and said, "That's still bad." Yes, that was still bad. Months later, when the school year ended and the emergency forms came home again in a thick manila packet, I sat at my kitchen table and filled them out with almost comical care. My handwriting was neat. Every checkbox deliberate. Me first, Ava second, Ethan third. No step-parent authority, absent written medical release. Extra note to contact mother directly for all health concerns. Attached copy of order. Mason sat across from me drawing sharks and said, without looking up, "You can put Aunt Ava before Dad forever if you want." I smiled. That's the current plan. He grinned and added another fin. I don't know how this ends in the long term. Co-parenting with Ethan is like walking through fog while someone keeps rearranging the furniture. Maybe he'll settle into the boundaries because the court made it inconvenient not to. Maybe Kendra will find a new arena for her concern. Maybe there will be another hearing someday over some other misunderstanding that turns out to have a login history. What I do know is this. The school called about an emergency contact, and when they read my ex's new wife's name, something finally became visible that had been forming in small, polite motions for months. Not love, not help. A replacement plan. The worst part wasn't hearing her name in the file. It was hearing the note that came with it, that I was inconsistently available, and realizing how easily a mother can be moved one line down if someone writes the right sentence in the right tone. They expected me to react emotionally and look unstable. Instead, I asked for the paperwork. And that, more than anything, is what saved me.